Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Birth and Baby Talk. I am Megan Grant, and I am one of the owners of Toronto Family Doulas of Ottawa, and Hamilton Family Doulas. If you've been watching us for a while, you know who I am, and you know that one of the things that I love talking about is self-care, and especially in the postpartum period. And that is what we are talking about today. We are talking about leveling up one aspect of your postpartum self-care, and that is your bleeding. So nobody likes to talk about this part. Nobody wants to, menstruation and lochia and vaginal bleeding are all sort of stigma and taboo topics that nobody wants to talk about, or we talk about in really hushed tones. Today we're going to throw that out the window and we're going to be totally blunt about it. So lochia is the bleeding that you experience postpartum, and you will experience this bleeding whether you have a vaginal birth or a cesarean. Doesn't matter how you give birth, this is going to happen. It is a part of your life for a few weeks following the birth of your baby. And the reason for that is lochia is comprised of sort of, I'll call it the debris left in the uterus, as well as of course, I put my childbirth ed stuff away yesterday. The placenta comes away from the wall of your uterus and it leaves a placenta-sized wound on the inside of your uterus. As your uterus contracts down postpartum and gets smaller, which takes about 6 weeks to go from pregnancy to pre-pregnancy size, that wound shrinks and you bleed from it less. It also, heals as wounds do. But so in the first sort of couple of days following the birth of your baby, you're going to experience the most sort of intense bleeding. This includes fairly large clots. It includes bright red blood. It looks very much like the sort of often the heaviest day of your period. And this is all totally normal. This is, it's blood from the placental wound, but it's also the mucus and fat and epithelial cells and all kinds of other stuff that make up from it. And so that is that bright red in those first couple of days. This is when most people are using really large pads. They're, if it's not your first baby, you're probably experiencing those after pains that feel very much like contractions. All of this is sort of part and parcel of those first couple of days. After that, you're going to move over to sort of the next stage of lochia, and that is when things start to get a little bit more like pinkish or light brown, again, kind of like that end day of your period where everything is tapering off. It's going to be less heavy, but it is still there. It's still present. It's still something you're going to deal with. You're still going to be changing your pads every couple of hours. And then once that, sort of continues for another week or two, then it starts to fade off even more, and you'll get more like heavy whitish or yellowish discharge. And that is still part of the lochia, and I'm going to tell you what it's made of. It's fat and mucus and all kinds of other gross stuff that your body needs to flush out. Now, a couple of things to be aware of with your lochia postpartum. Lochia is normal. Bleeding is normal. It's even normal for some people to have the color of their bleeding sort of fade to a bit more pink and brown, and then bleed a little bit heavier again, and then go back to pink or brown. Particularly those of you, and all of you know who you are, who don't take it easy in the postpartum period. In fact, going back to heavy red bleeding is the first indication you probably have that you have overdone it that day, and you need to sit your butt on a couch and have a glass of water and relax, because your body is stressed a little bit. That's what it's trying to tell you. The other thing to know about lochia is there are still, even though it's normal, there are still sometimes signs that you need to be aware of in your postpartum period and you watch for. Anybody who knows my story knows that I had a really severe postpartum infection after my first baby, and then I had another postpartum infection, uterine infection both times. With my second baby, it just didn't get really bad because at that point I knew the symptoms and I knew what to look for. So the first thing you're going to look for is the continuation of those clots. Not if you have a clot right after getting up from sleeping or right after you get up from breastfeeding. That's super normal. The blood has pooled in your vagina and has clotted while there. And during breastfeeding, just like in labor, your body is releasing higher levels of oxytocin. That's causing your uterus to contract even more than it might be already. Again, it's pushing more blood out, which then pools in your vagina and clots. However, if you're still passing big clots after a couple of days, this is definitely something to check into with your healthcare provider. And I don't mean like teeny tiny little clots. I mean like peach-sized clots or plum-sized clots, the size of a child's fist clots. These are the clots we're talking about. Teeny tiny little ones, that's normal. That will continue for a little while. But those bigger clots are a sign that something isn't quite right. It could be that your placental wound isn't shrinking, your uterus isn't contracting down. It can also be a sign of infection. The other thing you're looking for, just like any sort of sign of infection, is smell. Normally, lochia smells mostly like menstruation. It doesn't have a particularly foul odor to it. If you have a foul odor or the discharge sort of turns into a very mucousy or greenish color, and yes, it's a thing that can happen, obviously those are signs of infection of some variety, and you do need to get in and see your healthcare provider for that. Now, this can be a little bit harder if you are with an OBGYN because you don't have an appointment for 6 weeks, but you need to call, and sometimes they will have you come back to triage in L&D. So in the labor and delivery ward, they'll have you come back to triage and they will assess you there, simply because those are the doctors are there and they can see you right away, and they are obviously familiar with that early postpartum period and healing as well. And then the other thing to keep in mind is usually, for the most part, lochia stops by around 6 weeks postpartum. Now, for some people, that continues a little bit longer. Some people, it feels like it stops, and then like a month later, they go, oh crap, I'm getting my first period. This is nonsense. I'm breastfeeding, or I didn't think it would come back this fast. And then they don't have anything else for like 6 months. All of that is totally normal. It's a lot of hormonal fluctuations that are happening as your body really starts to settle in and adjust to feeding your baby and being a new parent, and the sleep deprivation and all of those hormone triggers. But if it continues, really continues after 6 weeks, that is, again, another reason to see a healthcare provider. That's not considered normal, and it is an indication that they need to check out, make sure your uterus has gone back down to its pre-pregnancy size, the wound internally has healed, and that everything's okay, and this is just, you're an outlier, or there's something going on. So, those are sort of the things you want to be aware of in terms of complications. But in a non-complicated world, lochia is still honestly kind of an inconvenience. Periods suck. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. And having one for 6-ish weeks is nobody's idea of a super fun time. So we don't really, we don't talk about it. We always warn expected parents that this is coming up. Although, most people are aware of it in some capacity, not everybody realizes it's going to last for so long. And one of the things we like to talk about in regards to postpartum recovery and in postpartum care is trying to find times and ways and moments and instances where you can recapture parts of you. In the postpartum period, it can really feel like you're sort of like, you take the back seat and the baby is the center of attention, both your attention and the attention of everybody else. The joke is somebody walks into a room with a new baby and nobody looks at mom and everybody looks at the baby. That's not, it's a joke, but it's also not a joke because it's true. So one of the things we like to do is give new parents these little things that they can grab a hold of that help them to feel a little bit more like themselves. And that's why when we got put in touch with the founder of this company, we were super excited because, again, it's just one of those little things that can help people recapture a little bit of feeling of normalcy and feel a little bit more like themselves. And that is the mesh panties. So if you've ever given birth before, or you've even seen all of these sort of like TikTok and Instagram reels and all of that, where the women are walking around in their mesh panties in their hospital room after giving birth, this is what we're talking about. But I'm not going to lie, those panties are kind of boring. They're white, and you don't always know what to do or how to deal with them and that sort of thing. So I'm about to bring on Lexie from Hey Moon Mama. I am so excited to have her here because she is going to talk about her new product that she has launched that's available to everyone now. And she is going to tell you sort of how she came to this place, how she developed this product, what she loves about it, and why she's hoping you love it too. So let's bring Lexie on and she can tell you her story.
Hi, thank you for having me today. It's so lovely. And I will say first off, very educational. I didn't even know that much about postpartum bleeding and the whole process. And it's like, you live it, but you just don't know sometimes. So very educational. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So yes, thank you for having me on, and I'm really excited to be here to kind of tell you guys my journey and how Moon Mama came to be and why. I guess to start off, I have twins. I'm a mama of twins, and I ended up having a C-section because my daughter was breech and she was the first one coming out. So they automatically say like, you can't have a natural birth. And I was really lucky to make it to my C-section date. So that's like one of my like big hurrahs for myself personally. I know it's like those little things once you like are in the moment that you are proud of. And I definitely am proud of that one. I guess about a year after they were born, my sister-in-law asked me this really simple question, and you think it's a simple one, and it was like, what was that thing that you needed? Like, what was your favorite item after living this year with your babies that you needed? And I thought about it, and it's like people get you into these things like I got the double bassinet that you could spin, which was great. It was super handy. I ended up with a baby Breeza at one point when I was a combination of breastfeeding, bottle feeding. I was like, that was handy, but it was glitchy. I had problem, but I won't go down that. But it was great. We got a diaper genie, all these things. And I'm like thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? The one thing that really I needed and I really lived in and loved was my hospital mesh underwear. And I had a friend, a coworker, tell me, she was like, when you're at the hospital, get as many as you can. And I gave birth at Mount Sinai. So if anyone listening has a baby at Sinai, you go from one floor is the birth floor, and then after you give birth, they move you upstairs. And it's like, once you're moved upstairs, that's where no underwear, you can't get the underwear. So like, you got to ask for it while you're still there. So there I am in the recovery room, and I'm like, can I please have some mesh underwear? I need to take it. And they're like, yeah, no problem. And then I don't have it. I didn't get it. And so I did end up, the store sold some, so I was able to get a few, and I had brought them home with me, and I cherished them. I wore them past my 6 weeks. They were just like this thing that it was like my little safety blanket almost. I don't know if that's a way to describe it. And they were like hand washed, hung up to dry over and over again, thrown in the washing machine once I got more comfortable. And I have to laugh because I have my sister and I, so I was the first one to give birth out of the two of us. And I call her like a week before I'm going to give birth. And I'm like, Jessica, I need you to go to Walmart and buy me large underwear. I haven't bought any underwear for my postpartum recovery. Can you go? And she's like, I'm on it. So she goes and she buys me these hilarious underwear that are like the lace top. And like, they just have no.
Oh, that is granny panty time.
Right? No, yeah. Again, like clueless, have no idea what I should be doing. And then I see them and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to wear these and how this is going to work. So again, loved my underwear. So fast forward to a year later when my sister-in-law asked me what I need, and it was those underwear. And I'm laying there and I'm like, but the thing with them is they're just so underwhelming. They don't make you feel special. You've just gone through this crazy experience that you don't know how to explain to anybody until you're talking to another mom. And then they're like, oh yeah, that happens. Oh yeah, that happens. And you're like, no one told me I was going to cry for 3 days. And it's like, oh yeah, you just cry. And it's like, so many feelings.
You are absolutely right. I will say, if you have a doula, she will tell you that you're going to cry for days. And if you have us as your doula, we're probably going to tell you what days you're going to cry.
Very
because there's hormone fluctuations and it happens on a very specific day.
Oh my gosh. I was like this crash that, again, like so helpful to know.
Day 3 and day 14.
Oh my gosh. I would walk out to my garden and just like stare at a bush and cry. And it would be like, you're just so overwhelmed. And yeah, your chemicals, hormones, everything's all off. So that's why it was like, I kept going back to those feelings and that need and want to be able to give a new mom who's like sitting on the toilet, so exhausted, looking down at her bloody underwear and smile. And that's where I just kept going back to, is that moment of like, why not make you feel a little good when you kind of feel not like yourself? So,
and that's what we liked about them too, is because, you know, as you were saying, and as I said earlier, everything becomes about somebody else once that babies are out. And it's about reclaiming small pieces. You're not going to reclaim your bikini cut, high lace panties probably right away. But you can reclaim fun. And it's okay to have fun, even when you're exhausted and sleep deprived and leaking from pretty much everywhere. You want to have something that isn't about that. Maybe it's that it doesn't feel hospital-y, like the white mesh panties feel almost clinical. Whereas what I loved about your product, when I looked at it and I saw it and we started talking, was that it feels more normal. It's really normalizing this idea that like, this is all just a thing that happens postpartum, and it doesn't have to be clinical, and it doesn't have to be this huge medical event. It doesn't have to be boring. You don't have to wear diapers. You know, you can do it and have fun, and it can be exciting, and it can be something, as you said, brings a smile to your face when you look down.
Exactly. And that's where I found, I really felt like you also, I needed that comfort that they gave, but I didn't like how, like, you could see the stains on it. And it was like, and it's something that you're not going to get away from that. But then it's like, at least when you have shibori dyed, fun colors, it's a distraction to that as well. And yeah, it goes exactly what you're saying, where it's like kind of regaining a little bit of yourself, where you were a day ago or 2 days or a week ago a pregnant woman, and you were a goddess as a full voluptuous woman, and now you are leaking from all these different places. You now have like a wobbly belly, or when you lay down and then it's like you look like you're 5 months pregnant. Well, I did almost look 6 months pregnant after postpartum, and you just like, you don't know where you fit. And that's why, and I don't want to be that person that's like, oh, it's so hard. But it's like, it's just you're at such a weird time. And when it becomes the conversation, you get to embrace it more. But when you, again, are not in that world, you don't know what you're walking into. And that's where it's like giving a little something back almost. Like, I want to be able to say, like, it's okay. If I could hug you and tell you that it's going to be all right, and you can like feel a little bit of like, I love how I'm like, I go back to like, just smile, a little bit of something that's yours in this time.
Well, so, and you made a good point there about your body. Like, your body doesn't bounce back. You're not going to wear your pre-pregnancy jeans out of the hospital.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't gain a lot of weight, even if, again, I come back to my story with my second, I gained a very small amount of weight. I gained 11 pounds in total in 39 weeks of pregnancy. And my son was 8 pounds, 8 ounces of that. So like, I didn't gain a bunch of weight, but I didn't leave the hospital in pre-pregnancy clothes.
No, you don't.
I went to the hospital wearing maternity clothes, because even though there was not a lot of weight gain, my uterus was still enlarged, and I was still swollen from the IV and being pregnant. And, you know, what I loved about mesh panties generally was they accommodated all of that.
Yes.
And they accommodated as you shrunk. So it wasn't like I would need one size for the first week and another size for the next 2 weeks. And then, they kind of shrink with you just because of the nature of the fabric. Now, just because I know our viewers are going to want to know, tell me sort of like the dyes and all of that, because that's something people are sort of questioning about, especially you're putting it next to your vagina. Yes, it's a self-healing oven, but you are putting something next to your vagina. So like, talk to me about the dyes and the process of all of that.
Okay, so the process, so they are made, they are not natural because of exactly what you're saying, where it's like they are very stretchy and they recover quickly and they expand and shrink with your body. So they're a polyester spandex blend, and they're knit in a way that there's no seams along the sides and the waistband, so you don't have those like little irritated areas. And then I use a dye that is like a home dye, so something that you can buy over the counter. I like a craft store. It sounds funny to say it that way. But I source it that way. And then I do small batch dyes. So each pair, it depends on when you go, when you look online, after you hear us talk all about this, it's all about how you fold. So it's a very interesting dyeing technique, because when, again, I was going back to that idea of like, how do I put pattern on these? And I have a design background, so I understand all over print process. And there's a lot of issues with different print techniques that it becomes hard. So I knew I had to dye it. And then one of the only ways to create pattern on dye is to shibori. And that's where you fold it different ways, and then you put clamps or pieces of wood, different things to prevent the dye from touching all of the fabric. So that's how I'm able to get like the little flower pattern, or it's like it looks like a stripe almost. So I play around with that, and then it's all everything's pre-washed twice. And I was very much aware when I was doing our wear testing to see, like I've shared with so many people before it went to market. And the concern was like color transfer. Again, yes, like on your skin irritations, anything like that. So that has not become, that's something that was very much in the forefront, because again, like, you don't need to deal with that on top of having a baby. So
I will also point out to anyone who is concerned about these things that whether you use mesh panties or cotton panties with a pad or a panty liner, or Depends or some other kind of adult diaper, all of it is plastic. All of it is sort of non-breathable to an extent. Pads, you've also got adhesives. If you're me and you have an adhesive allergy that got way worse while you were pregnant and you learned it the hard way postpartum, there's all kinds of things that, all natural. I know people sort of look at that and look for that. It doesn't necessarily mean it's safer or better for your skin, because if an all natural dye transfers, that's not any better than a non-natural. I don't like that term.
Exactly.
A synthetic dye that has been tested and washed, and you've done the work to make sure it doesn't transfer. So just because it's not like, I don't know, you didn't harvest the flowers yourself, doesn't mean that this is not a safe flower.
No, and I hear that, definitely. And it also goes back to like when I was developing the product, was finding the right content, so that something as simple as like the recovery, because when you get into more natural fabrics that don't have, let's say, spandex, you need to be able to have that recovery so that then it sits and it's not like, my concern was either it's sagging too much or not sitting nicely, because again, like, they are mesh, so they are more breathable, and they also I had the C-section. So the other thing was, you just don't want anything touching that incision. And again, like when we talk about people just focusing on your baby, as a mom who just had a C-section, like, you've had surgery. Like you've literally been cut open and you are recovering from a major surgery as well. And you don't get to just be like, I'm offlining for the next 2 weeks. Like you are present and also, recovering. So you just need to be comfortable.
Have major surgery. Here's a baby. Put them on your boob and feed them.
Totally. Totally. Oh my gosh. I just think about that. I was just talking about that, about double breastfeeding, and it's like people are like, oh, double breastfeed. And I was like, but take double breastfeeding and then try and burp both of them at the same time. That was like the first time of like heads banging into each other. It was so hard for me, but and like everyone gets a groove, you figure it all out, you put them down, like babies, they survive. They'll be okay. Everything's okay. But yeah, it's a tricky thing.
That's another really good point, is that these are sort of compatible with a cesarean incision that is healing. It's not going to sort of irritate. That's something that we find as doulas. A lot of our clients, you go to sort of just cotton panties, either even if they get the big old granny panties that are like a size or two too big, and it should come all the way up their belly to their belly button. It's just the fabric of the cotton or the elastic waistband snags on any stitches that are there that can stick. Sometimes people have, when they take the pressure bandage off, there's a little bit of adhesive left, and then the fabric sticks to the adhesive. And that's something that's really nice with the mesh panties, is because that spandex actually I've found in the past makes them much smoother than cotton, and so it doesn't snag the same way on inside, which is really nice for those who are recovering from a cesarean.
Definitely. I did actually, that was the other thing, was I called my mom and I was like, Mom, can you bring me some of your underwear right now? Because I'm going to try those too. So it was like, you're just trying to figure it all out. And in the end, I kept coming back to the mesh underwear. They were my lifesaver.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Lexie. We are going to have links for everything in the comments, so make sure you follow up there. You'll be able to go to Moon Mama and check out Lexie's products, as well as the link to sign up for our newsletter. Now, Lexie is amazing. There will be a discount code in that newsletter. So if you are expecting a baby in the next few months, this is definitely something you want to make sure you're getting on top of. And you want to sign up now because we have a bit of a surprise coming in August. There will be a giveaway, a class, some mesh panties, some fun mesh panties, maybe a few other things. So all of the details of that will be released in the next couple of weeks through our newsletter, and then that launch will be in August. So make sure you are signed up. Make sure you check out Lexie's products, and make sure you go follow her over on Instagram and her social media. You can see everything there, and you can get a really good idea of what these products are and how they can be beneficial for you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Okay, bye.